Good evening, everyone, and welcome to SADAG's World Mental Health Day webinar on how to be kind to your mind. Today is a really important day in our mental health calendar, and I'm here at SADAG, where we really focus the whole of today and dedicate the month of October to World Mental Health Day and World Mental Health Month. This year, SADAG is following the hashtag Be Kind to Your Mind, and I'm really excited that we have so many people that are joining us via our Zoom link, and welcome to everyone. I know we have a lot of people joining from around the country. Just some Zoom etiquette for tonight's webinar. Please keep your mic on mute. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat box, or if you have any comments or statements, or feel free to use the emojis and engage with us in this new online world. Also, to all of those people that are joining us on our Facebook page, thank you and welcome to tonight's really practical, insightful event. And I think what's also really important is that you've all dedicated an hour of your day to focusing on your mental health. So thank you. This evening, I'm joined by two great guests. I'm very honored to welcome our first speaker this evening, Dr. Kalinda Linder, who is a clinical psychologist and country expert in cognitive behavioral therapy. She's also done lots of press and media for SADAG over the many years, is an author of books and public speaker for major corporates around the country, as well as being on SADAG's board as our chairperson of the board. And we're really honored to have her tonight to really unpack how to be kind to your mind. Then we have our very own SADAG operations manager, Venetia Godan, who's going to be speaking to us this evening about mental health and how to do a mental health check-in. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Really look forward to your feedback and comments. Please post in the chat box. Let us know what you're thinking, and maybe you can share some tips with the audience this evening. Thanks so much for all your time. We are recording the session, and we'll make sure to share that recording after the session in case you've missed it. But it will also stay on our Facebook page for weeks afterwards, so that you can access and share with all your friends and family. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Kalinda Linda. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Cassie and Venetia, for inviting me. And thanks everybody who's joining us tonight. And, you know, I think we all share this view that we need to educate ourselves and as many as possible around mental health. And especially, I just loved it. When I heard that the theme was be kind to your mind, you know, it just sounds wonderful. So I'm really excited, and I've got a couple of slides because otherwise I'll kind of go in many directions. So let's just get going, I think. I'm going to do a share screen. Let me just see how to do that. There we go. Okay, can everybody see it? Good. Okay, so I love this brain meditating. Oh, it was just so beautiful, and it stayed in my mind all day. Loved it. So I think it's just the perfect theme. So let's get going. So let's look at the context. So why did we need to be kind to our mind? So where have we come from? So let's go back a couple of years. So 2019. I don't know about you guys, but I don't think anyone had a good year. Let's move swiftly forward. Then 2020, we had this year of plenty and high hopes, but I don't think we specified. So that was really a shock year, where I think everybody was just shock and lockdown and fear and loss and terror. And then we got through that year, and last year was the year of the fatigues. Zoom fatigue, decision fatigue, depression, burnout, compassion fatigue, you know, all of that. It was ghastly. And then this year started, and I think we were quietly hopeful, but then we had a lot of disruptors. So the one of them was from just getting used to working from home, boom, the hybrid workplace. And then we've had all these happenings around the world, natural disasters, this terrible conflict going on in Ukraine. So there's a lot. And of course, in South Africa, yeah, you know, we're a hardy bunch because we had load shedding and lots of other things. So this is kind of where we are. And actually, I like to think of this year as a bit of a fruit salad, because I don't know about you guys, but, you know, apart from 2020, we were all in shock. Last year, we were all just tired. This year, I've got both of those. And some days I'm hopeful, and some days I'm just angry. And some days I'm kind of sad and existential. So I've been looking around, it's not just me. So I think we're all in this strange fruit salad year. And so our poor minds have been pulled in a million directions. I mean, look at that slide, it's just horrible. And so I'm really delighted that tonight we get to do a little bit of TLC and self-care for these poor minds of us. So this is where we are, and where are our minds? So if you look at this graphic, 1 in 3 is going to be suffering with something to do with mental health. And there's no nice way to put this. Okay, so somebody right now, 1 in 3, there are lots of us on this call, so a third, 1 in 3 is either going through an anxiety episode or depression or something along those lines, okay? So 1 in 3 is really struggling with mental health right now. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a full-on clinical depression or anxiety. There's situational depression, there's situational anxiety, there's existential anxiety and depression. You know, what's going on here? And there's trauma, so there's a lot going on. So if you're that 1 in 3, thank you for being here tonight. And maybe you're not that 1 in 3, but someone you care about is that 1 in 3. Or maybe we could all be that 1 in 3 sometime in the future. So this is where our minds are. 1 in 3 of us are displaying what's going on, and the other 2 maybe not yet, maybe not at all, but we've certainly all taken a beating. So I think our minds definitely need the TLC, whether you're that 1 in 3 or you're somebody who's helping and caring for that 1 in 3. Now, why is your mind so precious anyway? So if you think about it, you have one mind. Okay, yes, I know we change our minds, but I mean, ultimately we have one mind, and you only have the one. Okay, that's going to carry you through your entire life. You can't beg, borrow, or steal another one. There is no shop for buying minds. So we have the one mind. It's that one thing that is super, super, super precious. And you know, your mind creates everything. I mean, think about it. If you're in a good mood, your mind puts this kind of sheen on everything. And when you're unhappy or when you're angry in a bad mood, your mind puts a different kind of cloud over everything. And we know that we can snap out of these states sometimes, but sometimes not. So at the end of the day, we can think, I only have the one, and it's got to last me my whole life. And this is the mind that creates everything, my experiences. So think about tonight. The fact that you're on this call, that you're interested in being kind to your mind, this is great. Because maybe a few years ago, we wouldn't have been thinking about mental health quite like that. I'm now the first to admit that, goodness, we're all taking strain. Healthcare providers, everybody's taking strain. And so I've been very aware of my mind and the state it's in, and that I really need to look after it. Don't worry about the labels of, are you clinically this or that? We all have taken strain. There's not one person who isn't taking strain. So we've got to look after these minds. I think we can agree that they're very precious objects. So let's talk about how do we do this, being kind to your mind. I'm going to say that a lot because I think it's wonderful. So you can just see that little Zen brain, that's what we're looking for. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about mental diet. You may have heard this before, but let's talk about this a bit further. So we're all in a sea of language. So I'd like you to take a moment to think about that, okay? We're in a sea of language. So if you had to think about a fish, the fish is in a sea of water. Does the fish know it's in water? No. Maybe let's take a bird. So the bird takes off and it flies through the air, and it's kind of in a sea of air. Does the bird know that it's in a sea of air? It doesn't. So let's take us humans. So we can do land and water and air and all of that stuff, but actually we're all immersed in a sea of language. So it's the language in our own head. And that's probably the most important conversation. But it's also language coming in from everywhere else. And we're pasting and futuring and all sorts of things. And our language takes us outside of ourselves. So tonight, hopefully, we're coming a little bit more inside. And I'll talk more about that as we go. But this is the key thing. So we're in a sea of language. So what are we doing around social media? And I'm not for or against anything. I don't think anything is good or bad. It depends what you do with it. So at times, social media, we're using it right now. It's wonderful. And we're doing something really helpful. But there are other times when you're just kind of scrolling and 2 hours pass and then it's not so great. And let's be honest, sometimes when we're doing this scrolling, what's happening to us? We're getting unhappy. We're getting angry. Maybe we're getting some FOMO. Maybe we're thinking, oh, well, you're having a good time. I'm not. So there's a lot of stuff that happens. So I would like to invite you to please keep an eye on your internal narrative. And that's really important. So we talk a lot about what's coming in via social media, but what's that narrative? And if you pick up, it's going to dark places or tight places or tense places, you've got to put that device down and just wash the dishes, do something practical. Okay. So be very aware of the narrative coming in and what it's doing to the narrative inside. Now, the news is another one. So I don't really watch or listen to news. Maybe once a week, I'll go and take a spin through something like News 24 or something. But typically, I don't. If it's big enough, I'll hear about it because I don't have capacity for that at this point in the year. So that's for me. Maybe others feel differently. But, these are just some ideas about the language that's coming in and the impact that that's having. And it's not always kind. And then there's the other thing, which is the gossip. And I don't know if everyone does, but we kind of, get into a complaining kind of mood every now and then. Or maybe we just fed up and frustrated. And so we're doing a lot more of that gossipy stuff than usual. And, lots of people have been attributed, the saying has been attributed to a lot of people. But this is very helpful. Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? So do I need to be looking at this? Do I need to be messaging this? Do I need to be spreading this? Is it kind? If it's kind, okay. Is it necessary? And if it's necessary, also just check, is it true? So I think this is very important, and never more so than in the area of mental health. So if you hear somebody's going through something, what are you doing with that information? Are you being kind? Are you discussing what is necessary with who you should be discussing it with? And is it exactly true, or is it kind of what you think you heard? Or you kind of think the person had the story? So this page is very much about the narrative. And this is being kind to yourself as well as being kind to others. Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? And think of your own narrative. If you're actually going through something and you're feeling, gosh, I'm really exhausted, or I could be depressed, I'm not sure, or, I'm really worrying so much. This is where you can apply all of these and think about, is it kind to yourself to just suffer in silence and just tell yourself to man up? It's not kind. Is it true? Definitely not, because we have support all around us. Is it necessary? Well, now that's tricky. Maybe when you're in the middle of something, sure, it's necessary just to, okay, let's park that. But as soon as you've finished that thing, is it kind or true? So then you come back to those. Is it kind to speak to yourself like that? Would you speak to somebody else like that? And is it true? Okay, so I'm hoping that this is stirring up a little bit of thinking differently about what kindness actually means. So that's the mental diet. Let's talk about self-care. So the most important thing is that self-care is not selfish. So, nowadays there's this thing going around on the internet. We were all ADD, and then we were all bipolar. And now there's this, everyone's a narcissist. So, nobody wants to be the narcissist, do we? So at the one end, yes, is a narcissistic mindset. It's all about me. And at the other end is a bigger problem, which is I don't matter at all. And that's where we're neglecting ourselves. So the medium spot in the middle is where we actually need to be. So I need to look after me so that I can actually be more available and give more to others. That's really where we should be at. So the neglecting yourself is saying, I don't matter. The narcissist is, I'm the only one who matters. Whereas just being practical in the middle, I will look after myself so that I can be more available and give more to others. That's being kind. And if you're a very kind person by nature, this is even kinder, because you cannot give what you don't have, and you can't pour from an empty cup. How are you going to do that? So, every now and then you just got to be, hang on, I need to go and regroup a little bit. I need to do some self-care for myself. I need to do a little bit of a time out for myself. So please remember this, that self-care is not selfish, because you cannot give if you don't have. Okay, and you definitely, if you have nothing in your cup, what are you going to share? So let's look a little bit at the practicalities. So how do you do it anyway? How do you do self-care? So this is a beautiful analogy that I was taught by a meditation teacher. So he said this, he said, if you're somebody who's very kind and your kindness is always going out to others, what happens when you burn out and you get exhausted? So imagine that you were an ambulance driver. So you're a paramedic and you've got this ambulance and it's yours, and you really want to help. So you're always out there. And you never take this thing for a service. You never check you've got a spare tire. You never just pause to make sure that you clean it. You actually never replenish your supplies inside, because you can't stop. You've got to help, you've got to be available. Now imagine if you were at the side of the road and this paramedic arrives in this beat up ambulance that kind of looks like it's been off-road too much, and it's not clean, and the person's got red eyes because they haven't slept. Maybe if you're a guy, you haven't shaved. If you're a woman, maybe, I don't know, well, your hair could be all over the place. But you arrive there looking like you haven't slept, and you probably haven't, and you haven't eaten, and you haven't got all your supplies because you didn't have time to go and get them. You can see the picture, that's not great. And I know that part of you might be thinking, well, if I'm taking time out to do self-care, then who's helping and looking after and doing? But the thing is, remember, you cannot pour from an empty cup. So if you're an impaired paramedic in your ambulance helping the whole world, and you're not actually thinking about yourself as well, you're going to make mistakes. And you know, at the end of the day, we don't have the power of life or death. Why was that person the one who you couldn't help because you didn't have your supplies, or that person was the one you could help because you did have your supplies? So, you know, all those big questions, we need to think about that. We do not have the power of life or death as humans, whatever one's belief system is, but we do have the power of self-care, and we really need to do that. So you want to keep your ambulance nice and clean and well stocked. You want to be well stocked in terms of sleep and energy and, you know, being comfortable so that you can actually be kind. So you've got to be kind to you, got to be kind to your mind. And here are some ways in which you can do it. Lots and lots of research shows that even 10 minutes of exercise every day actually is phenomenal for the brain, for anxiety, for depression, just for the actual brain itself. It protects you from things like dementia. So exercise, it's more important that you do it consistently than just maybe once a month you go and do a 3-hour hike. So rather do 10 minutes most days of something that gets your heart going. And if you're walking, hopefully you'll also have something like nature. There's a lot of research around actually getting your feet into the earth. And there's something called forest bathing people are doing now. But any tree will do. We're very lucky. South Africa, we've got lots of nature, beautiful. And I personally love trees. So I just go and walk in one of the parks around. And we are very lucky. We have those. So anything to do with exercise and nature, lots of research, that's incredibly good for your mind. It's very, very kind to do that. And then sometimes just getting lost in a book, albeit a program or something like that. That helps a lot in terms of self-care, something that you just transport your mind. It gives it a break. You remember how it was when you were a child, you were just in fantasy, you were carefree. And then say no. And sometimes we do need to actually push back and say, I can't right now. Okay, very important. So these are just some ideas around how you can actually do the self-care. And remember, at the end of the day, you want that ambulance and the driver nice and sorted so that when you go and help and you're kind, you're going to be doing that from the best place. So you can see self-care is not selfish. It's really, really kind to do that. Okay. So you might be thinking, but I'm so busy and, you know, I can't even think how I'm going to start doing that. So I want to talk to you about the power of micro actions. So even if you did 5 minutes of exercise every day, or you maybe had 7 hours of sleep a night, a few times a week, it's a little micro thing, or you took a micro break. So I'm going to share one with you right now. So I'm just going to take my glasses off for this. So this takes 30 seconds. So you're going to be resting this part of your face, this socket, on this part of your hand. And please warn people around you, because if they see you doing this at work, they might think, oh no. Okay, so lean forward and you're going to just rest onto your hands. And you would do this with your eyes closed for around about 30 seconds. And then relax. Okay, so there's a micro. We can all do that. And maybe another micro would be doing little stretches, because we all have aches and pains. So let's do some of those. So we're going to be reaching up. This is a cat stretch. And we're going to just reach our arms up like this and just stretch. And look up and have a lovely stretch for 10 to 30 seconds. And then we're going to do what we call aeroplane wings. So you can do these as well for 30 seconds. Okay, so these are tiny little things, tiny, but they really do work. Just little things, like even drinking water. Okay, so things like that. So your stretches, resting the eyes, just looking around at something else, because I think all of us are working behind screens these days. So taking just a visual break, looking around. Okay, so look at the flower for a moment instead of me. So that gives you a break. And the water I've mentioned, even just little micro exercises, just a few minutes of exercise every day, just a few minutes of connecting every day. And there you go, there's another drop. So there's so much you can do. And I'm also going to show you a breathing exercise in a moment. So this is the power of micro. Just these tiny little changes consistently actually add up. And we all know when there's a leak, you put a bucket under it. When you look again, the jolly well thing's full. But we also know that if you just had something just dripping, it's like that with everything, just a little bit, micro, don't get overwhelmed. You clean that part of your ambulance, you clean that part of it. You tweak your sleep a bit, you tweak your diet, you're a little bit fussier with what social media you go onto. You're a little bit fussier with what kind of conversations you have, that way or this way. This is the kindest thing you can do for your mind. So please don't ever think that a micro drop means nothing. It's really helpful in the long run. And finally, I'm going to show you some wonderful breathing exercises. So I'm going to show you two. So the one is when your mind is just super busy and super distracted. So what we're going to do, this is a generic, anyone can use it. We're going to just do this together. So find a position where your back is straight but not tense. And you can either close your eyes completely or partially. Hands and feet nice and stable. Just relax. So you can invite your mind inside and just let it drop from your head to your heart center, the center of your chest, where you would point to yourself. And this just helps keeping your mind calm and undistracted. And we're going to take a few moments just focusing on the breath. The breath is always there. So preferably breathing through your nose and breathing naturally, not changing the breath in any way. You become very curious about the breath, about the way it sounds, the way it feels, coming in at a slightly different place than where it goes out. That on its own could be something you could do just here and there when you've got a few minutes. And just even closing the eyes and focusing on the breath for 30 seconds makes a difference. Remember we said micro. And this is now the part which is for distractions. So what we're going to do is we're going to mentally count each exhale. And we're going to go from 1 till 9. And sometimes you can manage to get there with not too much other noise going on. But if you get stuck or you get lost, you just start again at 1. So let's do this together. So breathe in. And as you breathe out, mentally count 1. Breathe in. And mentally count 2 as you breathe out. And now we carry on to 9. Okay, so that's 9. So if you got there long ago, you're breathing too fast. So you really just want to try and slow it down and get into a rhythm. And the beauty with this one, I love this 9 breaths, because you have a little something for your brain to do, so that's not running around thinking other things. And it's normal to be aware of other sounds and thoughts on the periphery. but there's a little task just big enough to actually keep you focused. And there's a micro challenge just big enough to keep you focused. So that's why this one works incredibly well. So I think anybody can do this one. And that's the trick. You just want to go from 1 to 9. Takes you probably a minute or so. And when you come out of that, you feel like a different person. So I'm going to leave you with this particular one, and then I'll be available for Q&A at the end.
Thank you so much, Kalinda. I think everyone was so in that moment and learning these really practical tips on how to help us cope. I think after the busy year, busy month, busy day that we've had, what a great way just to catch our breath, just to catch a moment. So thank you for those tips and tools. If anyone has any questions or comments, please post them in the chat and we'll come through to it in the panel. Now I can hand over to our Venetia. Venetia, over to you on how to do a mental health check-in.
Hi, thank you so much. I think I loved so much what Dr. C said at the end, that it just got me into a whole different space. So thank you so much. It's been a long day, but that's great. And it always is. Let's try and fingers crossed we're going to be able to share correctly. Let's do this. Okay, it's decided to go right at the end. Murphy's Law, that's okay. Thank you guys for having me here. And I think after that lovely presentation, Dr. C, I think just highlighting a few of the practical tips just a little bit around the mental health check-in, just those questions you can ask, the different ways you can, bring that awareness to yourself, just really complements everything Dr. C said. So thank you so much. And I'm going to continue here. And what I wanted to start off with, and that's why I put a friendly reminder. I think we often take it a little bit more difficult, or we want to create a task of what we're doing. And that becomes hard because then we're making it almost like a job. It should be something that we are doing and love doing, to look after our mental health, to look after how we're feeling, and just to be aware also of how are we feeling. So why is it important to check in with your mental health? Because your mental health actually impacts the way you think, feel, and act. It also determines the way we feel, the way we handle stress, the way we relate to others, and the way we make choices. And that's why it's so important on today, especially today, Mental Health Awareness Day, that we actually just do these check-ins, and we do it every day from now. This is one of my favorite slides, and I tend to put it in every single presentation just because I think it's so valuable. Often we don't realize where we are or where we are in our mental health at the moment. We can be going through our daily activities, we're taking the kids to the schools, we going to work, we're interacting with colleagues, we're interacting with family members, but we're not taking that moment to check in with ourselves. And often we don't realize where we are. And when we don't realize where we are, we're going to take to a few negative coping skills, or we're actually going to, not be aware. So we're not going to do the right things. So I actually have this little sheet. It's on the side of my desk at home. And I always look at it and say, okay, where am I right now? Especially when you're feeling overwhelmed. It can be sleep related. It can be the fact that you're poorly performing. You're noticing that your concentration is a little bit bad. You've noticed that you haven't slept for the last maybe 3 nights. And you're like, oh, good, I'm going to sleep well tonight, so that will be fine. But we're not taking an active decision to say that I'm going to do a sleep routine. I'm going to, stay away from my computer or my phone for the hour before sleep. So it's all of these things that make a difference. And I think why I love this slide so much is because it actually makes you think about, what can I do for myself so that I can get back into that healthy space, so I can get into that green bit where I'm feeling good and I'm managing in my day. And how you can do that is a mental health check-in. So rating your mental health. So you can take a moment, and often I say that you can put an alarm on your phone. Put an alarm for 8 o'clock in the morning, put another one for 11. Choose your times that work for you and do this mental health check-in. You know, the little alarm is going to say mental health check-in. You're going to be like, okay, how am I feeling right now? From 1 to 10, where 1 is not great and 10 is absolutely brilliant. How am I feeling in this moment? Have I eaten? When last have I eaten? Have I drunk any water yet? Exactly what Dr. C said, it's those micro moments, like, have I stretched? Have I done anything to be moving? Body check, so important. And I think because we all work in front of our computers on a daily basis, we often not noticing that our necks might be tense, our backs might be tense. So noticing that, and exactly what Dr. C said, it's that breath. You know, I think, and I think I always say this because it happens to me, is that often when you're busy doing a lot of things, your breathing is quite erratic, but you haven't done a check-in to notice that it's actually erratic. So it's about bringing it back in and putting that calmness and then just getting back to a good breath space. And also, what is taking up most of my headspace right now? So even while you're in this webinar, or you're listening via Zoom, or you're watching via Zoom or Facebook, where is your headspace right now? Are you thinking about what we're saying, or are you thinking about what am I going to do tomorrow? So learning maybe to be a little bit present in this moment and hearing and understanding and giving yourself that gift to say that, you know, I'm going to take this time out to listen to what I can do to help me. A mindful minute, and this is lovely because you can also put an alarm on your phone, different times of the day, and you can say, I'm going to do a mindful minute, and that is breath. So you can put on a little timer on your phone for a minute, and you can do a breathing exercise. You can listen to the sounds around you if that works better for you. You can look around, so you can maybe go outside for that minute and, you know, look at the sunshine, or look at the trees, look at the color of the grass, look at how the colors are changing right now. Touch is also very valuable. I often have, as a personal thing, I often have a lot of little stones on my desk, you know, like strange little paper that almost like that bubble wrap. And I think that's valuable because it gives you that opportunity to refocus and reframe when you're feeling a little bit low or you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. I loved the slide. I actually found it and I thought this picture is so nice. And I thought this would be the ideal time to ask people that are, you know, watching us via Zoom or even watching via Facebook to maybe just share. How are you feeling right now? We have these lovely hearts, like I'm having a hard time right now. I'm doing okay, I guess. So what can I do tonight to do a little bit better? It might be the breathing, it might be doing something more activity-based. It also might be as simple as taking a shower before you go to bed. How to check in with a colleague. And I think this is very valuable because we're all in this very different hybrid working space where we're going to the office, we're not going to the office, and we're often not meeting people as regularly as we would like to. So you can do this over WhatsApp, you can do this face-to-face, but checking in with a colleague that might be, you know, you notice that they might not have been looking after themselves like how they used to. Maybe they're looking a bit tired and overwhelmed and unhappy. Maybe asking them, how are you feeling today? How are you really feeling? Also, maybe asking them, did you get any sleep or rest last night? You're looking a bit tired. But remember, all of these questions that you're asking must come from that space of support and non-judgment. It's coming from a space of concern. So maybe you'd like to add to say that, you know, Mary, I've noticed that you've been a bit tired recently. I'm very worried about you. How are you feeling right now? Maybe do you have anything that's stressing you out at home, depending on your relationship with that person? But if you've noticed it, please ask. Lead by example. So maybe mention that, you know, I've been feeling a little bit overwhelmed and this is what I've been doing to help me sleep better. You know, maybe I'm reading before I go to bed and I'm not using my phone. And maybe sharing that little bit of information might give a nudge in the right direction for someone else. I thought this was very interesting, and I think we often, especially now, with all the changes that has been happening, self-care and mental health for kids. And I think even as parents, we're always not sure about how we're going to ask this. How are we going to speak to our little ones, or even our older ones, not really only our little ones. But share your own feelings to encourage self-awareness. So when they notice that you're sharing to them or sharing to family, then they're more able to do that. Maybe set aside time for them to have low stress or solo activities. So whether it be coloring, whether it be journaling, that's always a lovely way to actually de-stress. You can use some of these questions to actually, and I'm going to go through them a little bit later maybe, just to use in your journal even. Practicing self-care. So you're setting that standard for yourself, which means that you're setting the standard for them. Remember, and I think this is something that's always said, they'll do what you do and not what you say. And I think it's so important to do it so that they can actually follow what you're doing. Encourage your child to focus on the moment and also focus on articulating feelings. I'm angry at the moment. I'm sad. I'm happy. How are you feeling right now? And I've got a few questions that I'm going to share that you can use to actually have these conversations or start these conversations with your children, whether they be littlies or a little bit older. Some conversation starters, there we go. What did you do today that made you feel good? So, what did you do to make you feel good? Did you, eat a really tasty apple? Did you talk to your friend about something fun? What is there something that you're looking forward to in the next few days? It could be, going on holiday, or it could be going on a picnic. What's taking up most of your headspace? And I think letting them be aware that they can share this. Like, I'm angry at the moment and I'm thinking about someone. I was going to say Mary again, but I don't want to. What are you thinking about most right now? Who did you have a really good conversation with? Or who did you connect with today? That also highlights that you're going to become aware of who your child is connecting with in their day, and maybe just figuring out, how they feel about that person and how they feel about their little best friend or their best friend. Is there something upsetting you or bothering you? So if you're noticing that they look a bit upset or they look a bit disgruntled, maybe asking them that question and actually opening up that space for conversation. Maybe even asking them at the end of the day, what is your favorite song or movie that you might have watched recently? And what was the most exciting part of it? It starts these conversations. And I cannot stress enough that, starting these conversations might be a little bit difficult, but continuing with them is what really holds that value. These are questions that I wanted to highlight because I thought it's so important to say, what are the mental health questions that you can ask for yourself? And there's a little trick here, is that you can actually use these as journal prompts. So you can open up your journal if that's something that you do, and you can write these questions on, different sort of days or different pages. And as you go along and you write in your journal daily, you're almost answering these questions, which I think it's nice prompts because you might not know what you want to write about every single day. So have I been getting quality sleep? Quality sleep? Or am I getting, if I got regular bedtimes, am I sleeping at a set time? Am I waking up at a set time? Have I been isolating myself? Am I spending too much time alone and not interacting or connecting with loved ones? Do I have more worries or anxiety than usual? So maybe rating that. Am I feeling more stressed? Have I had more sad moments recently than happy moments? And noting this in your journal, I think, is really valuable because at the end of the week, you'll be able to see how you are feeling and what you can do to better that. Are you having trouble concentrating? That's a big one. Have you been experiencing any mood swings? So that's crying or thoughts of suicide or just feeling hopeless and helpless. Are you overly fatigued or tired at the end of the day? And what about at the end of the week? How are you feeling on that Saturday or on that Friday afternoon when you know that the next day is the weekend? Are you making lists for the weekend and not giving yourself that time to sort of calm down, refocus, and then regenerate for the weekend. Give yourself that time. The following questions, I think these questions are so valuable, and something that SADAG always highlights is ask, listen, and connect. And these are simple things, but I think when you're asking, it's about asking, from that space, as I've mentioned before, is asking from that space of non-judgment, asking from that space of support, and then actually giving that person that moment to share whatever it is that they're wanting to share. And then knowing that you don't have to fix it. You're there as a support, you're there as a loved one, and you can connect them to help that they might need, whether it be a telephonic counselor at SADAG, or whether it be, their family member, or it might be even their psychologist, and say, maybe you need to make another appointment. Maybe it needs to be a sooner appointment. You need to then connect them with help. And I'm almost done, I promise. What not to say. And I think this is very valuable, because often in a moment that can be very instant, we often will say things like, think positively, pull yourself towards yourself and get on with it. Get over it. Don't think about it. That's a big one. Snap out of it. It's just for the moment. It's all in your mind. Just do some exercise and you'll feel better. We all know that exercise does help, exactly how Dr. C mentioned, that it does help, because it actually helps you get energized a little bit, but it's not something that you want to just tell a person when they're feeling low. But you have everything to be grateful for, and other people have far less. Often a person that is feeling low and feeling hurt, they know they have things that they should be grateful for, but it's hard. What you can say, I'll be here to support you. I might not know exactly how you're feeling, but I'm here in this moment and I want to listen to how you're feeling. I care about you and I want to help you. What can I do today or in this moment? I'm sorry that you're going through this. I want to help you. Know that you're not alone. And also maybe asking them straight up, how can I better support you today so you feel a little bit better? And I'm sure this is scary and overwhelming, but I'm here if you want me to help you. Sometimes a person will say, hey, I'm okay. I don't need your help. But you can say as a response and be like, okay, I understand that you don't want to talk right now, but know that when you are ready, I am here to speak to you. I am here to support you. I know that Dr. C shared a few of the self-care tips, but I thought this picture was really nice and sort of touched on all the different aspects of self-care that Dr. Kalinda actually mentioned so beautifully. How to reach out to SADAG. It's our suicide crisis helpline. We also have a WhatsApp chat line, and as well as the SMS, as well as the online contact form. Also, if you go onto our website, you will find tons, if not gazillions, and that's not a word, but so much information, whether it be those short videos, webinars, toolkits, articles, and so much more. So please make a point of just trying to look at it. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, man. I really do appreciate those helpful tips. And I think for a lot of us, it's really great to have these reminders, is that we think we're more aware of how to take care of our minds and our mental health, but to have these examples in front of us are so important. And I definitely suggest to people writing down notes. The recording will be available afterwards. So almost starting every Monday, watch the recording and set your week for some good self-care tips. Or even better yet, when those Sunday scaries kick in, to go back to this video and learn some of those self-care tips. So thank you so much, ladies. I really do appreciate it. We have a lot of questions, so I'm hoping we can use the last 10 minutes to really unpack some of that. And I'd like to just go to one of the first questions here. And maybe Dr. Kalinda, you can start off with your feedback. So we have a question here. Self-care is very important, but what I'm going through right now is I'm struggling to eat. I'm only able to eat when I'm around people at work. Could you just touch on a little bit about the self-care and making sure that we're looking after ourselves and that factor?
Yeah, I think when somebody's very anxious or when somebody's very stressed, then you've got that fight or flight, and part of that is your body's bracing. So when you're on your own, maybe it's just too tight and you actually you're either not thinking about eating or you feel nauseous and you just can't get the food down. So from a cognitive behavior therapy perspective, we would always look at what's different at work. Is it that you're more relaxed? Is it that you kind of feel a bit of peer pressure? Is it that you remember the self-care when you're at work? Is it that it occurs to you to eat when you're at work? So I want to actually encourage everybody to do that where is it going right in your life and what's happening there that's allowing that to go right? And where is it going wrong? And obviously that's where those factors are not at play. So I'm hoping that could be of use.
Fantastic. I think that's really helpful. And again, we often look at where our mental health is not doing great or where the stress is, but I think also looking at where it is doing well and what those trends and themes are can be really useful. So thank you. We have another question for you, Dr. C, with regards to how do you know when you're exhausted or when you've exhausted your self-care options and you now need professional help?
Okay, so that could be compassion fatigue. Because if you're a really nice person and you're always giving and you're doing, maybe, you've never really burnt out before or had compassion fatigue, but I think the last few years have been a lot. So what happens is first there's an exhaustion and then there's an emotional exhaustion where you just feel, I actually don't even want to be an ambulance. I just don't care if there are people who need me. And then eventually it becomes cynical. And that's where you just really don't care. It's like, I don't care, just go away. And what women tend to do, which men don't do, is we second guess ourselves and we have self-doubt, where guys just go straight for the cynical. So that the self-doubt is, well, what's the point? It's not going to help anyway. Is it really making a difference? So if you're picking up that there's exhaustion physically, then an emotional one, no matter how much you sleep, you just don't feel better. And then with that self-doubt and what's the point? And then just that cynical or venting or just anger. That means you're at the end. And compassion fatigue normally slides into depression. So please be careful. So what Venetia was going through, that whole list of things to look out for, has your sleep and mood been off for about 2 to 4 weeks? And then with that, have you had a change in appetite, concentration, memory, motivation, libido? When you've got a cluster of symptoms like that, it's time to get yourself to the GP. And if you're not sure, as Venetia was saying, yes, there are a gazillion resources on SADAG, on that homepage alone. So if you're not sure, believe me, you will find something on depression there. And you can go through that list. And there are a lot of self-questionnaires as well online. And you know in your gut, when you're just finished and it's, I need some help now. So it is actually the right thing to get yourself to the GP. And I know nobody wants to be on meds. It doesn't have to be forever. But if that's what you need, no one says to an epileptic, well, why are you taking meds? No one says to a diabetic, well, why are you drugging every day? So if you've got a chemical situation with serotonin or one of those, you just take the chemical that you need, even if it's for 6 months. And I promise you, it's going to be necessary and it's going to make you feel like a human again. And then, of course, we have therapy, supportive therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, lots of support groups and self-help via SADAG as well.
Thank you so much. And I think it's all those different routes and techniques that can come together as your kind of mental health toolbox, which is really resourceful. And I'm definitely going to come back to you at the end to wrap up on some of your social media handles where you share some really great insights, and your website. That's definitely one to add to the list. I have a question as well from Anonymous. I'm a recovering alcoholic and have diagnosed with ADHD, depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And the question is, with regards to the mental health check-in, how does one prevent going down that rabbit hole and having those thoughts kind of snowballing, especially when you're by yourself? Any tips?
Okay, so I think that 9 breath meditation, because basically what you want is a pattern interrupt. And this is for all of us, that when your thoughts are kind of going into, dark places and dangerous neighborhoods because they go there so quickly. The second you pick it up, you want to just kind of, okay, I'm going to do it now. So in fact, let's do a demonstration. So everybody think about something that's worrying you, something that's on your mind. Okay, feel yourself going down that rabbit hole and stop. Okay, so like that, you can actually even just snap yourself like that, or have an elastic on your wrist and zap your arm. Those are two options. Another one would be you could just count quickly, you know, like maybe do your times table, 5, 10, 15, 20, or maybe do something harder like the 8s or the 9s or something. Anything that's a mental distraction, and that's a pattern interrupt, because it's very difficult to actually try and reason with yourself when you're in a state like that. So you've got to do some kind of pattern interrupt and just shock yourself out of it. And then you can try and get a bit of control.
Fantastic. And I think really like to stop ourselves in that moment and that self-talk. I love that as you're getting into it, stop immediately. And it's probably a habit that we're having to learn more of when we are finding that those thoughts are really just snowballing when we're by ourselves. We have another question here from someone who works in a very busy working environment, and often it can get very overwhelming and stressful. How do I steal some time for self-care throughout the day when I'm in an open plan office with lots of deadlines? What can I do? Any tips?
Yeah, so I think what's very important there is the micro. So what we should do is every hour, even just for a minute, we can do that resting the hands on the eyes, you know, like resting your eyes. You can literally look around. You've got to go to the toilet at some point. So if every hour, it should be 10 minutes per hour, but I know no one does that. So if every hour you can steal 1 minute back, where you change the scenery, or you physically get up, or those stretches that I was showing you earlier, anything like that, as long as there's some kind of break so that you're resting your neurons. Because think about it, if you've been, say, working on your screen and then you look up and you actually engage somebody, that's one way. Another way, if you can, is to have interruption-free times and zones. So what I tell a lot of people is you put on your earphones, and not those little cute ones. It's got to be a big thing, so it's unmissable. And you just kind of disseminate that, so that, okay, when these things are on my head, I'm focusing. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. Just when you need them, you put them on for maybe half an hour at a time, and you're just in that zone. And when you take them off, it means, okay, the shop is open, I can engage. So that's very helpful. And then 3 hours max, and then you've got to get up and take a walk. And hopefully you then need to go to the toilet or something, and maybe get yourself some water along the way. And one good thing about drinking water is that it's got to come out. So, you know, that's a strategy. Drink your 8 glasses, you're going to have to take a break, even if that's the only break. So, you know, we've got to get practical. This is just how it is at the moment. We've got to get practical and simple and micro. And I think that's kind of, in summary, the best way to break that pattern.
Thank you for that. And Van, thank you so much for joining. I know you dropped off for a second, but the next question is for you. I've got someone in close to me who's suffering from depression, and they don't want to talk to me about it. How do I start that conversation and encourage them to do some self-care, even though they don't really want to talk to me about it? Any ideas of how we start that conversation?
Oh, there we go. Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. I felt so quiet in that moment. So I think that's a very good question. And I think sometimes it is hard to start those conversations. It's hard to even try and approach it. But I think the core of starting those conversations is that care. And exactly, you know, how Dr. C said, you know, like, we're kind people. You're wanting to be kind, but showing that sometimes can be hard. And maybe the perception from that other person, if maybe they're in that little bit of a cynical space, exactly, Dr. C, when you mentioned they might be in that cynical space. So maybe they're not hearing the words in kindness. So saying it, you know, I care about you, I'm concerned about you. I know that this might be a hard conversation, and that's a real thing. I know that it's going to be a hard conversation, but I am concerned. Is something the matter? Can we talk about it? Do you want to maybe, leave, if it's office space or home space that's maybe not the right space to speak in, maybe going out into the garden or going outside or taking a short walk and having that conversation. Maybe just sharing with me, what's troubling you, what's bothering you. Maybe I might not have the answers, but I might have just a different perspective, or I might know where you can get those answers. I hope that helps. I think it's very practical. It's very simple, but you'll be so surprised, as exactly what Dr. Kalinda said, is that you'll be so surprised how the simple actually helps so much more. And maybe being completely authentic and real and saying, I don't have all the answers, but I'm here to listen.
That's really helpful, is not coming in as an expert all the time and pushing it, but just saying I'm here and you're not alone. I love everyone's comments as well about how this was so practical and they're learning breathing techniques. And some people are also saying that this was too short, and I fully agree, but it's definitely a great start for World Mental Health Day. Just to wrap up on a couple of more questions, but we're going to be answering them in a kind of a flash towards the end. We'll definitely make sure to share more resources as well afterwards, so please stay tuned to our social media in the next couple of days. Dr. Kalinda, I'd like to come to you because I know that panic and anxiety are one of your passions, and you work so much with this every single day with your patients, and you do talks and presentations. And we've got a comment here. When I experience an anxiety attack, I get people asking, so what are you anxious about? And what are some of the not so much things to say when you see someone having a panic or anxiety attack? How do you actually support and help that person?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that in two ways. I'm going to try and be quick. So the first one is when somebody's in a panic attack, that is like having a fight or flight. So think of the thing that terrifies you the most. So it could be spiders, or it could be, something like that. Something that you really don't like at all. And it could even be something like imagine all your loved ones being like there's been some natural disaster and you can't reach any of them on the cell phone. So think of that terrible fight or flight. Now times that by 1,000, let's say. I was going to say a gazillion, but let's say 1,000. And imagine that hits you out of the blue. Okay, so that it just hits you and you have no idea why it's happening. So that's typically what it's like experiencing a panic attack. So can you reason with someone if they're in a state like that? Of course you can't, because they're in full fight or flight mode. So the best thing to do is to exactly what we've been saying tonight, is just be genuine. You might not have the fancy words, you don't have to. If it's appropriate, you can touch them on the arm, or if you're kind of close, you can maybe just hug them, and they might throw you off, but just touch so that they know you're there, and slow everything down. So I'm here, we're going to get through this, and you can gently try and help them with breathing or distraction or get them moving. So very practical, because think of it as an adrenaline surge and you just got to wait for that thing to pass. Gentle distraction also helps a lot. And of course, CBT's got many other techniques, but that's the best thing to do. And the second thing to do is afterwards. I say this to people all the time, that we're all scared of different things. So some people have snakes as pets, other people are terrified. Some people have scorpions and spiders as pets, and others are really not so happy. I love my dogs, and yet I work with people who are so terrified of dogs. So, everybody's scared of something. And I think that's the key thing. So just, fear is, everybody's got something. So just because mine is not the same as yours doesn't mean that yours is not valid. So that just might be a way to approach it afterwards.
Really practical tips again. I think it just helps us feel more empowered to know what to do in that situation. So thank you. Venetia, I have a question for you. Someone has posted here, I have trouble sticking to habits like exercising, sleeping, or even healthy eating. I might follow the routine for 3 good days, and on the 4th, I completely forget about it. And I think this is also where we can all relate, and that life gets in the way of all of our good intentions. How can I change that, and how do I stick to a better routine? Any tips?
Sorry. I think that's absolutely, you're right, Cassie, is that everybody actually starts off like, this week I'm gonna do this, and every day I'm gonna make from 7 o'clock to 7:30. I'm gonna go to the gym and I'm gonna do the exercise. But then you do it maybe 1 day, 2 days, a third day, like, oh, okay, I'll do it on the next day, and then the next day I'll do it on the next day. The one thing that I've noticed, and maybe it's just a trick that I use, is that I have tons of to-do lists, and I have to-do lists at home. I have to-do lists for work. It's something that keeps me in my routine, right? So you actually do a to-do list that you're gonna, like the simplest things. Like I put a to-do list for laundry, for cooking, for clearing out the fridge, for doing a little bit of exercise, or a little bit, like you might want to go for a walk every night. It's something that you have to write down, but you have to make an effort for. But what I also think is, you don't have to be so hard on yourself. So instead of saying, I'm going to do it every day, say that, okay, by the end of the week, I want to have gone for a walk 3 times. 3 times. I want to go to the gym 3 times this week. So what you do is, maybe on Monday, you don't go to the gym. So you put it 3 times on your list, gym, 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 throughout the week. Maybe on Monday, you don't want to go to the gym, so you don't go. Tuesday, you're like, okay, I want to tick off 1 here. So I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to tick it off. Maybe the next day you don't want to, and maybe the following day you do. So you have 7 days to go to the gym 3 times. So be kind to yourself and be kind to your mind, exactly what it is for Mental Health Awareness Day. But know that you don't have to be harsh and strict. There is a space for everything, and everything has its space. So take it easy. And if you don't do it every day, it's absolutely fine. Just say that, it was an off day. Maybe I watched a program on Netflix. Tick off. I hope that helps.
It does. And I think it's just about being realistic. And some days we're really good at sticking to our plan, and some days not. And that's okay. And really helpful in writing it down, having it available. And I think just having that ongoing, like making it a routine. And with all the technology nowadays, you can put reminders on your phone, your computers. So really, really practical advice. Thank you for that. We could go on for hours and hours, and I know that everyone needs to go, carry on, make dinner, shut down for the evening. I just wanted to come to you, Venetia, with a lot of the social media and apps that are around. Do you have any top suggestions of really helpful websites or apps that could help people on how to kind of be kind to their mind, or things that they should follow? Any of your tips?
So I have this very cool app that I use. It's called Meditate. It's a free app, but it's lovely because it's got very short breathing techniques on it. So I actually have one of those breathing techniques on my shortcut on my phone. So if I feel a little bit overwhelmed, or there's lots going on, I always just, click on that. It's 2 minutes and you actually get with it. Or you can actually maybe, some of those, and I've lost it in my mind. There's those TED Talks on YouTube, but the shorter ones. And what you can do is you can put it on your downloads, or you can put it on your, watch later list. And sometimes when you need a little bit of a moment, or you're driving home and you don't want to listen to the radio, listen to that. So that's some of the things that I do that I hope help someone else.
Thank you. It's really, really helpful. It's also nice to know that they're practical, that you use them, so you can actually talk from experience. So thank you very much for that. Dr. Kalinda, I know you have a website, Instagram page that both me and Venetia are huge fans of as well. So I just wanted to, can you share those details with us, as well as for all the busy women, working moms, juggling, about your book as well, and where we can find that?
Great. Yes, so the one is, I've got a website called thoughtsfirst.com, because I think your thoughts precede everything else. And then on Instagram, I do reels and I do slides and all sorts of things. I'm actually finally getting with the program. So the one is at Thoughts First. So it's thoughts and then a 1FT first. And then the other one is at Dr. Kalinda Linda. So they have very similar content at the moment. And then I've got a book. Well, there are a few of them on Thoughts First. There are 1 or 2 audio books, and then there's an ebook and a paperback. And that one's called Get the Balance Right. And as a working mom myself, I actually wrote it when I had a health scare, when my twins were only 1, because I was not getting the balance right. And then there are various other things, and most of them are free. So that's on Thoughts First. And then, of course, the Instagram is more informative. So please enjoy. And of course, SADAG, you know, the SADAG page, I mean, it's got videos, it's got so much stuff on there. I love it. So I think there's so many resources, we just have to do them.
Absolutely, it becomes this living library that we can go to. And I think I always use the analogy of having this mental health toolbox, is because we assume when we're having a bad day or a bad moment that we'll just know what to do to help ourselves out of it, or know how to take care of ourselves. But we're often really bad at taking care of ourselves. So having a toolbox, a go-to, having shortcuts on our phone can be really helpful. So as you mentioned, I will post in the chat box as well. Our website, www.sadag.org, has got lots of information, especially for World Mental Health Month. We've got new brochures, new online videos. We have a really practical mental health safety plan, which is a living worksheet that you can download, print, fill it in, just with some really helpful practical ways to look after yourself and to really help you in those difficult days. But please also follow us on social media. We have lots of events coming up over the next couple of weeks. We've got Facebook Friday sessions. We've got Twitter Space discussions. We really want to engage and share as much as possible. So please go to our website, follow us on social media. Our next session happening on Facebook this Friday, we're tackling how to look after your child's mental health. So please join us at 1 o'clock. To everyone this evening, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your comments, and even just sharing your own experiences. I think there's nothing more important than our mental health. There is no health without mental health. And I think having all of us this evening here to share is really useful. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. And to my special guests, thank you so much for helping and for all your inputs and insights. It's really equipped us for a difficult week ahead. And I think we all can't wait to go do some breathing techniques, to go find an app that we can follow. So thank you very, very much. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.